let's take social grants. It might sound like a good idea, but at the end of the day, it's very destructive. But it's not the type of thing that you can, and I would like to hear if you differ from me, it's not the type of thing that you can just cancel. You can't just walk in and say, this is bad, let's just stop it.
Correct.
So how do we, it's easy theoretically to say what has to be done, but practically it's a bit more difficult. So
Not really.
Let's, for the sake of your argument, say that there's a right-wing, center-right government in South Africa with all these laws in place. What would you, if you had to advise them, what would you say?
It's very, very easy. In 12 months, you and I could get this country growing at 5% a year. And economic growth lifts all boats. If we have economic growth, we reduce unemployment. If we reduce unemployment, increase tax revenues, we can reduce the number of people on social grants. Cyril Ramaphosa proudly says there are 18, 19 million on social grant. Proudly.
And it needs to be increased.
Proudly. Yeah. And it needs to be increased. How can you be proud about that? It means the country's stuffed. We need economic growth. Those two words. Did you ever hear it from the GNU? I haven't heard it ever from the GNU. They never use those words. And frankly, they don't know how to create that. So,
but what needs to be done?
So you don't do everything at once. You sell off state-owned enterprises. You don't create this blob of all the state-owned enterprises with someone in charge, okay? I mean, that's just a step too far. And take South African Airways as an example, okay? The ANC bankrupted South African Airways. First, they turned it from an airline, the best in Africa, into an employment agency. And then they bankrupted it. But what happened? Airlink, Safair, Semair stepped into the breach. We now don't need South African Airways. We don't need a national carrier. Of course, the private enterprise is privatization by default. And why not privatization as a policy and by default in all the other areas? It's easy to do, okay? Private investment will come in. People will step into the breach. They'll employ people. The economy will be lifted. Foreign investors will start to notice, see the right things happening. We need to deregulate, and we need to reverse some of these destructive RET, NDR bills that are being pushed forward.
Yes.
And deregulation. Sorry, I've said that already, but there are too many rules and regulations. And typical bureaucrats, regulators, and lawyers, my in-laws are all bureaucrats, regulators, and lawyers, they think they know what's good for all of us. So they add more laws and more laws and more laws. Let the private sector, let the man in the street, man and woman in the street decide what's good for them, and stop having someone at percent deciding. It was another great weakness of the national government pre-94 was the centralization of power in Pretoria. And David Ansara of Free Market Foundation has made some great speeches on this. But if you go to Free Market Foundation, Institute of Race Relations, and a lot of the work you've done with AfriForum and Sakelige and others, the policy is there. It's very simple how to fix this country. You just got to have the will and the leadership, and we don't have either. And a final comment, I would have, everybody's like, relieve the GNUs in power. Get on with life again. We're saved. Well, that isn't the case. Because the first thing I would have done if I'd been a leader of the GNU was put together a combined mission statement. Right, all of us are part of the GNU. Which direction are we heading in? This direction, right. Let's put down a list of what we want to achieve and how we're going to get there. And then announce, here's the mission, here's what the GNU represents, and here's where it's going. And here's why it's going to be good for the country. And here's how it's going to create economic growth. And then each minister, we have way too many ministers, by the way. What does a Ministry of Women do? I mean, it's a complete.
Well, the ministries...
I wouldn't even have a Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture. I mean, Gayton's doing a super job, but I don't even need a ministry for that. There are too many ministries.
Women, children, and people with disabilities.
So ridiculous.
Everyone except men.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And then I'd go to each ministry with our mission statement with the GNU and say, right, here's what you have to achieve, by when, here are your KPIs, here are how we're going to judge you. Get on with it. Have they done that? No. What is the GNU? It's just a blob to prevent MK and EFF getting into power. That's all it is. It's going in no direction.
And in principle, it's good, but if done wrong, the GNU could be the way for the ANC to make a comeback.
Which is what's happening. I think if there was a national election today, we should ask Frans Cronje about this, but I'm guessing, shooting from the hip, I think the ANC would be up to 45, 46, 47%, which means they wouldn't have to do a deal with the DA. They'd just do a deal with all the minority parties and they'd be in power. Then it'd be even more destructive.